Welcome to another episode of the Trailblazers Experience podcast. And my next guest today is Lydia. Hi, Lydia. How are you?
I'm really well, thanks, Antola. How are you?
Good, good, good. I feel like this has been a catch up long overdue.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a long time, hasn't it? Although it doesn't feel like that, actually. It feels like we only saw each other yesterday.
Exactly, exactly. So, just before we start, I'm just going to introduce you. So, Lydia is a former fashion buyer and now a sustainable fashion advocate with over 20 years' experience, having worked and lived in various countries. We're going to go into that. She now specializes in sustainability and circularity and supporting brands and businesses to drive meaningful change within the fashion industry. I love that. And that's just, picked off your own LinkedIn. Such a lovely, short, and to the point way to introduce you, Lydia.
Oh, thank you.
You've had a very full career, that's taken you lots of places, and now you're in Sweden. So I'm really excited to delve into how it all started, your background. Obviously, you're now working on sustainability in the fashion industry and all about the circular economy. And I feel like that'll be a new sector and a new career that young people out there can go into. So let's just delve into the background. How did you get into fashion?
Oh gosh, I got a lot to say. So yeah, I mean, I started with a very sort of traditional route, really. I mean, I went to university. I studied at Nottingham Trent. I did a business and fashion degree, which had a year in industry. And I went and worked in London. I started off as a buying admin assistant, and I very much kind of like worked my way up the ranks. So started off as a buyer's admin assistant, worked as a junior buyer, and then gradually worked my way up to buyer, senior buyer, and head of buying and design. So very kind of traditional in that respect, but it's taken me on many twists and turns around the world. So when I was, I think, about 23, I was asked to go and work for CNA in Europe, which was quite a strange move at the time because they'd actually closed in the UK. But I have always been about seizing the moment and seizing the opportunity. And yeah, the opportunity to go and live in Europe was really exciting. So I went off and I lived there for a couple of years and lived in Brussels. And that's where I started to do kind of loads of travel. So my first sort of insights into sourcing, really. And in those days, we were traveling to Pakistan and Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, India, Hong Kong. So yeah, really, really exciting. And that was my first time I went to China as well. So yeah, funny to sort of fast forward, which we'll come to about kind of where life takes you. And then I worked in the UK for a while for Georgia Asda as a buyer. And then I went to Jules, which is where we know each other from. And I worked there for about 8 years, I think it was. Worked my way up to head of buying and design. And during that time, I then got asked to go and live in China on a project, which took me to go and live in Shanghai for a couple of years. And again, seize the moment, seize the opportunity. And yeah, so I went and lived there. And that's kind of when the start of my whole kind of sustainability journey started, really. Because I think as a buyer, you're on this sort of constant treadmill of like, producing product and chasing sales and trying to be better than your last range and drive more profit. And it is a bit of a treadmill, really. And then someone once said to me, it's a bit like being a pop star. It's not like being a pop star at all. But in terms of, you're constantly like assessing yourself against your last record or your last range. And it is quite, it's a treadmill. It's non-stop, a buying job, yeah, you get to travel and you get to go shopping and inspirational shops all over the world, and that side of it is wonderful, but it's it's really, really full on.
Did you
But
find
yeah.
yourself questioning your why? Because obviously you've done it for so many years. You've risen through the ranks. You got to work in different countries. And I suppose maybe the exciting bit was being able to experience different countries, cultures. But then you realize probably that you're just doing the same thing. Like you said, it's a treadmill.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think people think when you say, oh, yeah, I'm going on this buying trip or I'm going on this sourcing trip, that it's all very glamorous. But, the reality is that you see a factory in a hotel room and, yeah, you get to see a few things, but it's, it's pretty full on. It's like really long days, really long hours. Um, and yeah, I mean, shall I tell you a little bit about my story about why I sort of changed?
Yes, please. That's
Yeah.
exciting.
So when I went to live in China, even though I'd done all these kind of trips over the years, it wasn't until I was really kind of based in the factories on a day-to-day basis that I really started to sort of understand the impact of, sustainable fashion. And, even though people were talking about it, I don't think it really kind of resonated with me. And then when I was working in the factories, it wasn't that I saw anything untoward go on. It was just the enormity of like how much waste, the number of samples that were just getting thrown away and discarded, and all the buyers who were being divas and were like, we're not approving this, that and the other. It was just getting absolutely ridiculous. And at that point in China, there was this real kind of government clampdown on factories in terms of their production levels because of pollution. So, for me, it was, it was stopping my orders from going, and it was causing delays, and it was causing price increases, all those things that were really challenging in terms of our business. But the reality was that the sky was going from grey to blue again. And I actually saw that with my own eyes. And my biggest sort of pivotal moment really was that we actually had an app on our phone in China, which was like the weather app, but it was actually a pollution app. And when the pollution got really high, this siren would go off. And the first time I heard this siren, I was sitting in my apartment, and suddenly the siren went off. It was like a bomb siren, and I genuinely did not know what it was. And I rang my friend who was an expat teacher at the time, and she said, oh, yeah, it's the pollution levels. It basically means that you have to stay indoors. And she was a teacher, and, she was basically had to, the kids couldn't go outside and play. And when I heard that, I was just like, oh my goodness. And suddenly it was like all the pennies were dropping. And I was like, I mean, my strapline is a bit like, I was part of the pollution and now I want to be part of the solution. But, that was my moment when I was like, okay, I need to change. And my first instinct was, I don't want to be in this industry anymore. It's so bad. But actually, I love the industry, and I love craftsmanship, and I love the creativity. And, I've got a lot of experience and I'm really passionate about it. So I sort of came away from that experience thinking, okay, I want to use all my passion and my energy to do something good. And that was kind of the start of my kind of transition really into sustainability.
But you hadn't at that point decided to start your own business. You said, how can I make an impact in the businesses that I'm
Yeah.
working for?
So at that point, I was, it was just, I was starting to feel a bit disheartened with the industry, or disillusioned by the industry, and it just didn't feel like the right fit anymore. But yeah, I didn't make a sort of clean break. I sort of just started to think, okay, how am I going to kind of almost reinvent myself a little bit and use, rather than make a clear sort of break into something else, it was like, how do I use all this experience and kind of build on it? So I actually, I wanted to get a bit of sort of credentials behind me. So I did a sustainable leadership course at Cambridge University. And I did that on top of my day job. And that sort of gave me a bit of I think it gave me a bit of confidence actually, in terms of like that sort of grounding on top of all my experience. And then Jules actually created me a role, which was fantastic. So I worked at Jules, and I started up their sustainability strategy, which was called Responsibly Jules. And then I'm just trying to think now. So many things have happened. Yeah, and then it was the pandemic. I had a baby. I was on maternity leave, and my partner actually got offered a job in Sweden. So we moved to Sweden in the end of 2020. And that was kind of my reset, really. It was a chance for me just to sort of take a bit of a step back and think, okay, what am I going to do now? And I'd had my little boy, and I think you just start to sort of see life through a slightly different lens when you have children. And, also obviously with the pandemic and, the way the world was. And then I just kind of, it was one of those crazy moments when you're in the shower or something and this idea comes to you. And the word Enkel means simple in Swedish. And I felt like everyone's talking about sustainability, but actually it's still this kind of big, heavy subject, and it's really complex. And it's like, well, you can't wave a magic wand and suddenly becomes a sustainable brand. It's like, you might be doing some good over here, but you've still got challenges over here. So how do you even begin to start to transform your business? And so I had this idea of like being able to kind of break it down into sort of bite-sized chunks to start to sort of drive meaningful change. So that idea started with Enkel. And then I realized that Enkel, and you'll correct me on this, means grandson in German.
Yes, yeah.
And obviously I had my little boy, and it just suddenly all felt right, because it was like thinking about his future. And, when he grows up and he starts to ask what I did for a job, I want to be able to say, I worked really hard to make the world a better place for you to grow up in, because that is the reality of, we're the ones that kind of cause half the problem, and they're going to be the ones that are on the receiving end of it. So, I think I just made this really kind of conscious decision that, that's what I want to do now. And I'm just going to focus all my efforts and my energy on driving positive change in the industry.
And it's so interesting how you mentioned you decided, after that experience in China, that you wanted to, educate yourself about sustainability, and you took on this course. And those are little nuggets of information that people need to hear, that sometimes you have to, first of all, inform yourself, educate yourself, and you may have to do it on top of your day job just to get yourself ahead. And your idea for starting a new business didn't just come, right away. Like you said, creative moments, being in the shower and saying, this is what I want to do. So you've talked about Enkel that you've started. What is your mission and with the platform? And obviously now you are calling yourself a sustainable fashion consultant. What do you think is the mission of Enkel?
My strapline on Enkel is transforming fashion to a circular economy. How I do that is the big question. So there's there's sort of three ways that I'm doing it. I think what I wanted to do with Enkel is make it really accessible, because I feel like there's a lot of us in the industry that need to almost like unlearn what we've learned, because it's not kind of fit
Like
for
a reset, yeah.
And there's lots of agencies out there and consultants, but I wanted to make it really accessible. So it's not, because what I felt when I was doing some consulting with brands is that I was feeding all this information into senior leadership, but actually the people who are on the ground doing the product developers, the buyers, the designers who are working, 2 years in advance, they're the ones that kind of need to know this stuff. And, how do you get access to that information? And it's not about necessarily doing what I did and going and doing a 12-week course or something. It's about just having, bite-sized chunks of information so you can upskill yourself and stay relevant and stay, informed. So I've got kind of three levels to the business. One is I do a weekly update on LinkedIn and a monthly newsletter. And that's where I pull together all of the kind of industry insights about what's going on in sustainable fashion. And I think I've spent quite a lot of time reflecting on my sort of time in industry, and, being informed and being on top of what your competition is doing is really key. But now keeping on top of all that is so hard. There's so much information out there. A lot of stuff is, behind a subscription wall. So it's quite hard to get access to things. And quite honestly, when you've been sat at your day job all day, who really has the time to then go on and do all extra research? So my aim with that is it's almost kind of just drip feeding information so that you're really informed. And if there's a particular story that you're like, that's really relevant to my category, for example, if you're a denim buyer or something, you can go and find out more. But it's just having that knowledge, because I think, change is only going to happen if people are informed and inspired. And, you get that by seeing what other people are doing. So I do that, and I do that for free. And I've sort of had a little battle with that, because it takes me a long time to do it all. But one of my things is that I want to make it accessible to everyone. And I've literally got CEOs in California who are subscribed to that, but I've got fashion students in London. And, that's what I want. I want to sort of make that information available to everyone. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I'm doing consulting with brands. So, albeit at the moment it's smaller brands that I'm working with, but I'm doing projects on resale platforms, or looking at reducing like material impact, so looking at how to transition sort of typical materials to maybe lower impact materials. So a whole host of kind of different things with brands. And then the final part is Sustainable Fashion School. And my vision with that is to have a whole suite of courses. So if you want to learn about fabrics and fibres and their impact on the environment, or if you want to learn about transparency in the supply chain, or if you want to learn about packaging, or you want to launch a resale platform, whatever it is, you can go in and you can do almost like a deep dive, and it'll take you through all the headlines, all the background, what the challenges are, what the solutions are, and then resources of where you can now go to actually make that happen. So it's almost like I'm doing the work for you. And even though anyone can access that information by just researching it themselves, I think by doing online courses, you've almost got someone there kind of hand holding you through and bringing it to life with kind of real life experience of what that means in the industry.
Yeah, I find that really great. So you have like a three-pronged effect. And I guess, like you said, you want this information to be accessible. You want people to be able to read it. I think I was looking at one of them where you said 70% of unused clothing ends up on the coast, of some third world country. And those numbers are significant. So if someone takes that information and when they're going into their, sourcing meeting and say, okay, how can I make a change? That's already one piece of information, fact,
Yeah.
with a source to back it that they can use.
Yeah, and I think as well, I'm always screenshotting things on my phone, and then I'd start kind of regurgitating this story, and I'd be like, oh, I read somewhere that something, and then I couldn't quite remember what the fact and figure was, or maybe where I'd read it. And so I think just being able to provide that information in a way, if you were in business and someone said, right, we need to launch a resale platform, that's your project to go and work on. Actually, if you're not in that world, it's quite overwhelming to go and even
Yeah,
think, where do I even start? Who are the key
yeah,
players? What are the challenges? Why should we be doing this? What's the value? How much is it going to cost us? All those things. Actually, if you can go away and you've got a trusted source of, okay, you're going to walk me through this, you're going to give me all the facts and figures, you're going to tell me who the key players are and who the partners are. And I think everything as well is about, partnership and collaboration now. It's there then, and you can go through it, and then you can take that away, and obviously you can then rework it and modify it for your business.
mm,
But just having those kind of like that, almost like a toolkit, and I don't really feel like that exists at the moment. And yeah, I think in my former life I would really have valued something like that. So yeah, that's my kind of vision with the school.
yeah.
And
I'll
actually,
say it's such a great idea. I mean, ESG is a very big part of most, some organizations now. So environmental sustainability governance. But like you said, it's all about collaborations because you need more brands to work together because they can impact legislation, for example, and making that change. But just for the audience, you talked about the circular economy. Do you want to just describe what that is so people can understand?
yeah, so typically the industry was very much classed as a linear economy. So we refer to that as like take, make and waste. And what we mean by that is that we extract the materials from the earth. So like, cotton is grown, or like leather comes from animals, or actually a lot of like viscose is actually originates from trees, and there's loads of issues with deforestation and et cetera, et cetera. So, a lot of people generally don't know where materials actually come from, but they
It's
come from
crazy, isn't it?
they come
Yeah.
from the earth.
Yeah.
So we take the materials, we extract the materials, we make our products in production, which has huge environmental impacts in terms of how much water is used and all the chemicals that are used and what happens to that wastewater and pollution and microplastics and et cetera, et cetera. So we make our products, and then we wear them, and then we throw them away. And where do they go? Well, everything ends up somewhere, but as far as we're concerned, it's somewhere else. So it's sort of out of sight, out of mind. And that was the traditional model. And obviously then you've got all this kind of fast fashion caught up in that, where people are just buying things, wearing them a few times and then discarding them. And now people are beginning to realize the impact of that. And so the shift now is about a circular economy, which is all about recapturing the value and bringing that back in and reusing it. So instead of discarding things, it's about, okay, well, how do we make things last as long as possible, whether that's through making better quality products that are really going to stand the test of time, and buying more kind of wardrobe staples and things that, you know, you're really going to sort of wear and utilize and love wearing. And maybe if you don't, then it's about selling them on. So whether that's about resale, and obviously there's a huge growth in the secondhand market, which is really exciting. There's a stat from Ellen MacArthur that says if you extend the life of a product by 9 months, it will reduce the environmental footprint of that product by up to 30%. So, you know, there's a huge shift. You know, and that'd be great because it's saving clothes from going to landfill. But there's many fibres that are used in the fashion industry that can't be regenerated back into new fibres. So there's a real kind of education piece as well about people really understanding what their clothes are made from and what actually happens to them.
Yeah, and I feel like Sweden or Germany, you know, countries that are in the EU are already ahead of the game in terms of what they're doing from environment and recycling. So if you see Net-a-Porter, they talk about net sustain, H&M, their conscious collection, and the resale and secondhand market. It's exploded, Lydia, so much. I think everyone is offering some sort of resale platform, whether it's DVF or Jigsaw but I guess the thing is, where do we see this going? Do you think there is progress being made, or there's still more to do?
Oh gosh, there's so much to do. I think it's a really interesting conversation actually, because yeah, everybody is jumping on the bandwagon of launching a resale platform, and you know, it's really great to see so much progress, but that is just one part of the jigsaw puzzle. I think for brands, it's almost easier for them to switch on a resale platform and deal with the stuff that's already out in the world than it is to go back through their supply chains and start looking at the materials that they use and making the shift to lower impact materials and to lower impact processes. You know, they've already got so much commitment. There are massive cost implications. It probably means shifting their supply base around. You know, there's huge kind of challenges within that. So I think a lot of brands are moving to the resale platform because it's an easier one to sort of start now, and then they can start talking about sustainability and what they're doing. But what I don't think is right is when brands say, oh, we're sustainable because we've launched a resale platform, because that is just one part of this huge complex jigsaw puzzle. And ultimately brands need to be launching a whole host of different sort of services within their business, which will like drive revenue. So whether it's about resale, about repair, about and like I say, taking back some kind of products and actually turning that into new fibres and materials. You know, they need to have a whole host of different sort of business models within their business, so they're not relying on driving revenue from just making new clothes all the time and sort of driving growth in other ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so much work to be done. And, you know, when people sort of talk about H&M and it sort of a bit of backlash, really, it's really challenging. I mean, you know what it's like to work for big companies, and, you know, these companies, I mean, none of it is really sustainable because, you know, we're all putting stuff out in the world that we don't really need. But, you know, actually brands like H&M, I mean, interestingly, they've actually dropped their conscious range now, and Zara have also dropped their Join Life range, and they're trying to try lots of different things, that ultimately they will roll out to wider parts of their collection. But until it's like proven, you know, they can't roll it out to their whole collection. It's just not possible. But H&M have, you know, they're investing a lot of money in Sweden in innovation that will drive the circular economy. And, you know, if brands like H&M can demonstrate that it's possible at scale, then that will be an absolute game changer. They've also, interestingly, they've actually partnered with a textile recycling company in Sweden. So they're actually building their own recycling business as another arm of H&M. So, you know, there's some really interesting things happening, but equally, you know, they're still churning out a lot of fast fashion. And, you know, until that stops, then this problem isn't really going to go away.
Lydia, you're so right. Until it's embedded within the organization, as not just looking at the profit, but actually even maybe it needs to be a KPI, you know, of something that businesses and shareholders have to be accountable for. you talked about your business and how you've started it. Talk to me about the challenges that you've faced, being now self-employed, entrepreneur, mother, wife in another country, because I think it's important to hear about them and, say, look, it hasn't been easy. What challenges have you faced?
Yeah, that's really interesting. You should touch on that actually, because it has been a really tough time. Like, becoming a mum is a massive life-changing experience. But for me, I became a mum. I left my job. I left my family. I left my friends. I left my home. I left my financial independence. I upsticked. I moved to another country with a small child. Yeah, it was quite tough. But I think I think the thing with me is that I've done it before. Like, I've lived abroad before. And I think you just embrace the challenges that life brings. And, it's, yes, there are challenges, but there's so much support out there if you go out and find it. And I think with the world that we live in now, with like social media and being able to network, it's amazing how there's always someone knows someone. And I think wherever I've gone to, I've always had someone who said, oh, I've got a friend who lives there, or I've got someone who's working there at the moment. And suddenly you have this whole kind of network of people that become your sort of support network. And it's amazing how those networks sort of come about. And I think I've been quite lucky that I've always just, wherever I've gone, I've always met not many people, but maybe 2 or 3 people who've become sort of my rocks in that particular place, and they've kind of like anchored me and been my sort of real support group. And yeah, I think what I would say is, like, the people that you meet through your life, really sort of nurture those connections, because you never know where it might take you in the future. So yeah, so that's sort of one thing. And I think just being quite sort of resilient, and kind of like trusting in the process of life. Like, you do have forks in the road, and, times when you kind of think, oh gosh, did we make the right decision? But you just have to kind of ride those times out, and know that it's all going to be okay. And I think you learn a lot about yourself when you put yourself in an unfamiliar situation. And I think, having done it several times in my life, I think I now know, like, what I need to sort of keep me on track, if that makes sense. And whether it's whatever my fixes are, I need to sort of make time in my life to do those things, because it keeps me level. So if I'm starting to feel a bit of a dip, where I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, or a bit anxious about something, I think I know the things that I need to do to sort of get me back on track. And I've learned that about myself now, and I feel, yeah, like I just kind of embrace it all, really. And know that, this, I will reflect on this time in my life and think, wow, do you remember when we lived in Sweden? Wasn't it great? Like I do do you remember when I lived in China? Wasn't it great? Do you remember when I lived in Belgium? Wasn't it great? You look back and you forget about all the times that were kind of tough, and you just think, wow, I learned so much about myself during that time.
That's amazing. You've talked about resilience. I think that's a very good trait to have, especially, and also seizing the moment, like you said, traveling to different countries, finding your community or tribe to anchor you and keep you going, and knowing that no matter what, it's going to be okay. Let's talk about your achievements. What are things you're proud of? You've had an amazing career, and now this next, step. What are you proud of?
Gosh, good question. Um, I think it's taken me quite a long time to sort of get to this point, but I kind of have a bit of a, like, hashtag be true, be you. Like, I think I spent a lot of my time in my early years feeling where about where I should be in life, where I should be in life at a certain age. The whole kind of comparison trap about what other people were doing, friends getting married, friends having children, all those kind of things. I was like off doing my career and traveling the world and stuff. And I think, yeah, it's probably taken me until I was in my 30s to just really, like, embrace everything that I am and everything that I'm about. And celebrate that and not really worry what other people think.
It's a brilliant thing, isn't it? Brilliant thing
Yeah,
to feel. Yeah.
like kind of really liberating when you just stop worrying about what other people think, staying true to yourself. And I think putting yourself in all those situations and stepping out of your comfort zone and all those sort of things, you learn so much about yourself. Um and yeah, I think now I'm so sure of who I am and what I'm about and what resonates with me and what doesn't. And that's okay. And yeah, someone once said something about the buffet of life, and it's like, you go to a buffet and you see what you like and what you don't like, and you pick this sort of mixed plate of things, and that's what life is like. You meet all sorts of people, you have all sorts of experiences, you in terms of what you enjoy in life and what brings you joy. It takes time to figure out what all those things are, and you're only going to know that by experiencing kind of different things. And so I think it is really important to just give it a go. And if it doesn't work out, it's okay. You learn from it, whether it's you learn something about yourself or about, even with a job, it wasn't the right fit. Well, that's okay, because you still take something from it that you'll take with you. So I think just learning to just embrace who you are is a massive thing that I'm actually really proud of now. But it's taken me quite a while, I think, to get to that, actually.
Yeah, that's a great achievement to be proud of, isn't it? Because it's taking you, helping you through your professional and your personal life as well.
Yeah, and I think there's that whole thing about finding your passion and knowing where your strengths are. And in terms of starting Enkel, there was a bit of me at the beginning that was like, oh gosh, I know I could be earning X amount working for this brand doing this, but actually I really want to do this. I really believe in it, and I really believe in the bigger picture, and this isn't going to go away. And I think when you find that passion, I think it's really important that you follow it, because lots of people say, they went off and they did this and this, but if it's not aligned with who you are as a person and your true values, you're not going to be happy however much money you're earning. So I think it's really important to stay true to yourself as well. And quite often that doesn't come till later, because, as I say, you have to try and do different things to sort of navigate all that and find out what it is that you really want to do. But I think if you feel really strong about something and you're really passionate about something, I think it's really important that you do that, because otherwise you kill your soul.
Yeah, yeah. And you've said that such an important point. When you're starting a new business, really it's the passion that's driving you, because, the initial years, there is no money, or there isn't, the type of money that you would have wanted. So it's about the passion, the values, what's your proposition? What are you trying to deliver? Why does it matter to you in the first place? Are
Mm-hmm.
the things that keep you going.
Yeah,
Lydia, you've
absolutely.
talked about values, and what are your values and your work ethic, things that have guided you?
Um, what am I? Okay. I think there's something around being a nice human.
Hmm.
Um, and I think, yeah, throughout the course of my career, I've always got on with people really well. And I've always respected people, even if I've not necessarily agreed with them. Um, and I think that's something really important, because you just never know where you're going to come across those people again in the future. So yeah, I think you have to just generally be a nice human, be a good person. Um, what other are my values? Being honest as well. I'm very honest, and I think in my younger years, I struggled a little bit, because I was very much like, what you see is what you get. I haven't got an ulterior motive. I was very kind of just upfront with, this is kind of me. And I think earlier on in my career, I struggled with that a little bit, because I I felt like it was maybe not frowned upon, but um, yeah, that you needed like a game plan or something. But again, that's something that I'm really proud of. Just being honest, and where you stand with me, and there's no messing around, and say it as it is, and just be honest and upfront, and it just saves everybody time and money. Um, what are my other values? Gosh, I'm trying to think now. Respect, honesty,
Be
um,
kind. You said it before.
time.
You've said some three good ones. Those are good ones for living a
Yeah, be true to
purposeful life.
yourself, all those kind of things. Yeah. it's quite sort of personal. I mean, I'm really hardworking and committed, but I think having a bit of a vision is really good, because I think,
Hmm.
I actually had quite a bit of like personal coaching in life, and it was really funny. One I spoke to this lady, and she basically said to me, in your career, every 6 months you put together this vision board, or not vision board, but like, this trend overview of like ideas and inspiration and colors and shapes and all this sort of thing in terms of your job. And then you spend the next 6 months bringing that vision to life and creating a range. And that's what you do as a buyer. But you don't do it in your personal life. And that kind of really resonated with me. And I remember talking to my partner about it on our very first date, because he's also from a similar sort of background. And so now I have this like bit of a ritual that on the 1st of January, I actually create a bit of a vision board, and I just put down pictures and strap lines of just things that I want to make happen in the next year. And some of it might be professional and some of it might be personal. But just having that kind of bit of a vision for myself about what is it that I'm working towards, I think is really, really good to have. So when you have those moments of doubt or you feel like you're going off track, you've got something to sort of remind you of what you're working towards. And I think if you're a creative kind of visual person, it's just a really nice thing to have. And also it's quite nice to reflect back on, because at the end of the year, you're like, oh, did I fill my life with all those things that brought me joy, and that's what life's about. Ultimately, it's about living your best life and doing the things that you love and making the time to do the things that you love. So yeah, that's a bit of I guess I sort of forgot about it, but yeah, that's a bit of a ritual that I do every year now, and I really, really look forward to it. And January the 1st is generally a bit sort of miserable, so it's just a really good sort of thing to start the year off.
Yeah, and I think it's a better way than actually writing down New Year's resolutions. Putting down where you see your life, because it might be something you achieve in 6 months or 12 months or 3 years, but it's a constant that you're working towards. And I do it too. I use Pinterest. I use notes on my phone. There are various apps now that you can utilize to pull these things together. So it's a good tip to put
Yeah,
out
and
there.
it's
Yeah.
so funny actually, because there's been a few situations in my life where I've saved a picture of something that really resonated with me, and I saved lots of pictures, but there's a few that I really, really love, and then years later, like someone's taken a picture of something in my life, and I've gone, oh my goodness, that is the picture, and then I've got the picture out side by side, and literally, I mean, obviously it's not the same picture, but there's definitely something that's like, that's what I wanted to make happen, and it's happened. And it's like those little sort of synchronicity moments in life that are just so amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
A combination of that and obviously hard work. There's no point putting a vision board together and not doing anything about it.
Right,
So
you've got to make it happen.
you gotta make it happen. Talk to me about self-care. How do you take care of you, Lydia?
um, so since having my little boy, I have to say I find it quite hard now. And I read something the other day. I think it was Mental Health Awareness Week, and it was on LinkedIn, and people were talking about, what do you do to sort of look after yourself? And one person had written, I need an hour a day to myself. And I saw it, and it really resonated with me, because I feel like I just need that space. And when my boy's in nursery, I'm working, and then he's with me most of the time. And then when he's gone to bed, I'm normally busy doing all the other things that mums have to do. So I don't really get much time just to myself. So I really like relish the moments that I do, just to reset, just to, listen to a podcast. I think one of my things is that I love to learn. And actually I find that quite relaxing. Like I almost like switch off by learning something. So I love to listen to podcasts. I love TED Talks. Actually, I find those really inspiring. I quite often just go for a walk and I just download something and listen to it. So it's kind of a combination of me having a little bit of like me time, but also like learning something as well. But yeah, just time with the people that like fill me up, I think is really important as well. So yeah, surrounding yourself with people who, yeah, make you happy, like bring you confidence, believe in what you're doing, yeah, just spending time with friends is super important. And I struggle with that a little bit now because I don't have my immediate friendship group around me. But yeah, when I can, then that's like super important.
Yeah. How are you building your close circle in Sweden, or has virtual connections been a very big way for you to keep close to people who you've built those relationships with?
Yeah, so there's two sides. There's I think when I became a mum, I was obviously in the UK and it was pandemic, so it was quite hard to do anything really. But in my head, the way I sort of frame that is that I would have had to have made new friends anyway, like new mum friends. So I just kind of made them in Sweden rather than in the UK. And actually, yeah, I mean, there's lots of kind of groups and things here. So I've met quite a few people here in terms of like that sort of network, which is great. And then from a professional network point of view, I feel like I've got this kind of new community of people who are maybe like other people who've sort of taken the leap of faith like I have and started off on their own, and they're building whatever they're building. And I've met quite a lot of people through LinkedIn who have almost become this like new kind of almost like an indirect team, and I have calls with them maybe every 6 weeks or so, and it's really nice to have those people who are doing what you're doing, or they've maybe experienced a challenge that you've got, and being able to just have chats with people who are sort of in a similar sort of place really. And that's all kind of virtual, but I still feel like I've made some amazing connections actually in the last couple of years, which is like my new, like I say, almost like my new indirect team or my new community.
Yeah, and you've mentioned a very important point. I'm finding that with my life as well, is as I've started to be clear, comes with age, I suppose, on the things that matter to me. So in my personal and professional life, that's what's opening new avenues to meeting people who have similar values, similar goals, similar visions. And that's probably with you on the sustainability then road. There are people who are on that same path. Secondly, also starting their own business, becoming a consultant. So you sort of are forming those connections, I would say, organically by following your passion. It's just happening, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, that whole hashtag be true, be you, I think when you are just your authentic best self, things happen. And it's amazing some of the stuff that's happening actually. And yeah, I mean, I struggle with the whole social media thing of like, how do you show up as yourself on social media? But yeah, I just try and be myself. And if it doesn't feel authentic, then I don't post it. But yeah, definitely. I think surrounding yourself with those people that are doing what you're doing, or maybe they might be a little bit further down their kind of journey with it, is really, really helpful, because when you're working for yourself, you have to do everything.
Yeah.
Whether and I've got the added challenge of translating everything from another language as well. So setting up a business is a challenge. Setting up a business in another country is even more challenging. But yeah, surrounding yourself with people who have maybe faced some of those challenges, and they can offer you a bit of advice and guidance. It's just really great, and just being able to bounce ideas around. When you don't have a team as such, it is really important. But the amount of things and opportunities that are coming up, and actually I can't follow up a lot of the things that I'm doing because I just don't have the capacity to do them at the moment. But definitely things are happening, which is super, super exciting. So I think, as I say, if you follow your passion, I think the right things come along.
Yeah. Talk to me about some exciting projects. I think you'll be doing some public speaking as well, won't you?
Yeah, so
Um,
so I haven't actually done one yet, but I've been asked to speak at quite a few events, which is really exciting. So I'm hoping to do that later in the year. I've also been asked to do some work with the Amsterdam Fashion Academy, which is super, super exciting. So working with their students on delivering their sustainability module. I've just today announced that I'm a partner with the Ethical Commerce Alliance. So that's all about ethics in e-commerce, which is obviously really exciting in a digital era. So yeah, I mean, lots of kind of things are happening. It's just, I think my problem is I'm so, I want to get involved in so many things, but I only have the capacity to kind of do so much. So got to sort of be quite selective about what are the right things to sort of get involved in. But yeah, and then also with the school, with Sustainable Fashion School, I'm working with different people who are experts in each of those areas. So drawing upon other people's expertise to help build and shape some of those courses going forward.
I mean, it feels like you've got some great opportunities. And, relish, Lydia, the power of saying no. You have the power to say no to the things that you can't do, don't have the capacity to do. And if they're for you, they will come again down the line as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, yeah, the whole less is more. It's about, choosing those things that really feel right, and doing, the best job you can with that. And yeah, I think that's, obviously I'm still kind of relatively new with, well, not new, but like quite early on in my journey with Enkel, and it's been amazing the response that I've had and the people that want to kind of get involved and yeah, work together and collaborate. But yeah, it is about, selecting the things that are congruent with what my goal and vision is for the business. That kind of
Exactly.
is the
That
right fit and that it is aligned.
Yeah, that whole alignment. So for the audience and people out there who are thinking of, starting their own business, getting into sustainability, I can imagine their students, I'm assuming now at universities, they'll probably might be a degree, coming up in that area. What advice would you give to them?
Um, so yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously going to university is fantastic and it's a fantastic grounding to whatever subject that you're going into, but actually there's nothing like real life experience. And I think it's not until you're actually working in industry that you really start to kind of put the meat to the bones and really actually understand what it all means. So I think just trying to get as much experience as you can is really, really important, because you really then start to truly understand what that's about, and also you create contacts and networks, which I think will ultimately shape your future as well, because once you start one thing it leads on to another and another. I think like online learning is such a huge area, and the whole kind of online coaching arena, I mean, it's set to be bigger than the gaming industry. The opportunity to learn online is huge, and people are teaching themselves everything now through through YouTube, and there's so many sort of course platforms and things now. So you don't actually have to go to university. I think you can actually learn a lot yourself, and I think it's actually really important to become a bit of a lifelong learner, and stay relevant in whatever industry you're in, because things are changing so quickly. So I think having that sort of drive to just learn more and hungry to learn more and know what's going on is really important.
Yeah, definitely. We were talking about it before we started the podcast of how, you've had to build your own website yourself. You're, pulling modules, you didn't go to university to learn that. I've had to learn how to podcast, to edit. It's all these things that nobody's taught us, but because we want to learn and improve our skill set, we've just gone on and done it.
Yeah, I'll tell you another thing that I do actually, is I've got like an email folder where if somebody sends me an email or something that's like really positive, I save it in this folder. So if I'm having days when I'm feeling a little bit like disheartened or like not believing in myself or something, I've got like these notes that I kind of refer back to, that I'm like, no, you're doing really well. And I also do keep a bit of a record of like when stuff happens that's like really good progress. I make a note of it. And I'm quite into not only kind of writing a bit of a goal, but also taking a moment to reflect. So yeah, so like at the moment I've got like a running list of all the stuff that I've been doing with Enkel. So like I was in the Times, which was fantastic, and yeah, like partnerships that have happened, and the number of people I've managed to get through the school in a short space of time, and yeah, like building the website myself, building the course platform myself. Like you actually have to take a moment to reflect on these things and go, like, you're doing some fantastic stuff here, because it's quite easy to always look at the things that aren't happening or the things that you haven't managed to get to yet. But I think it's really important to sort of, yeah, go back and just take a moment to recognize what you have done, especially when you work for yourself, because you haven't got a manager or anyone telling you you've done a great job. So you have to almost
Yeah.
do that to yourself.
Yeah, but even that's even a good tip, because I mean, I've never waited for a manager to tell me I'm doing a good job. I've been like you, sort of like reflecting, right? We went on this trip and the meeting was successful. We managed to negotiate, or, little things in the office, the presentation went well. You have to give yourself those kudos all the time. Because you should embrace the little achievements, because they all add up to big things, whether it's in your business or where you're working. So that's a very good tip to give. I love
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've talked about, your business, your career, your personal life. I think I wouldn't even touch on networking and mentoring because I feel like you've already talked about those little nuggets of how you've gone about doing it. What are three Trailblazer takeaways you want to share with the audience?
Three Trailblazer takeaways. Okay, I did write some notes here. I feel like I've probably talked about them quite a bit, but I'm going to just try and define that down to three.
Summarize.
So number one is about stepping out of your comfort zone. There's that whole thing, step out of your comfort zone is where the magic happens. I think, yeah, when you push yourself, that's when you really grow as a person. And it can be really tough sometimes to take that extra step or that extra leap of faith, and you think, oh, I'm not sure I'm ready. I'm not sure I'm quite equipped to do that job yet, or whatever it is, or I'm not sure I'm ready to get up and take that opportunity. I'm a bit scared or nervous, but I think you just have to push yourself to do it, because the worst that happens is that maybe it doesn't work out and you just come back, or you take a different job, or you do something else. But I think it's better to regret the things that you have done than the things that you haven't. So I would always say, yeah, push yourself out of your comfort zone. And then the second one is about, yeah, the one, be true, be you. So I think that's about really, yeah, recognizing what your values are, recognizing what your vision for yourself is, recognize what in life kind of brings you joy, what fills you up in life, and just making sure that you make time to do all of those things, because that's what will kind of keep you on track and keep you moving forward. And then I think the final one is about, yeah, surrounding yourself with people who really believe in your mission, and that whole piece around kind of networking, and yeah, being with the people that really kind of fill you up, because we all know those people who can kind of drain you and yeah, stop you from maybe believing in what you're trying to achieve. But I think, yeah, the people that you're with who really, you come away and you feel really kind of exhilarated, that is so important. So it's really important to make sure that you've got those key people in your life.
Lydia, that's amazing. I feel like you found your purpose, your vision. You're going on a journey that's trying to make a better world for your son and for everybody else. And what a great thing to move towards. The fashion industry can be very self-absorbing and, consuming and, lots of narcissism and things going on. But actually, if we can take the lesson that being creative, creating beautiful product is great, but if we can also save the earth and be kind to the earth and ourselves, that would be brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Lydia, thank you so much for joining me. This has been a lovely conversation. I feel like I've seen your growth. I mean, we worked with each other a few years ago, but you've grown, blossomed, such a great business that you're doing and doing it all yourself and in a new country as well. Are you learning a bit of Swedish?
Oh, so my little boy is now speaking a little bit of a mix of English and Swedish, and I can't say a word. And it's other people are saying to me, "Oh, he just said this," so I'm starting to feel really guilty now. But as you know, when you live in a European country, everyone speaks English, so it's quite easy to not learn. But yeah, now that he's speaking a bit of Swedish, I'm starting to feel like I must try harder.
Yes, yeah. Even just simple things as feeding him, it's like if you
Yeah.
learn the
Got
basics.
like he's got one of those books which is like my first thousand words, like a picture book. So yeah, that's kind of the basic level of my Swedish right now.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, you'll get there. You'll get there. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've had a great time as well on the
Oh, I've
podcast.
absolutely loved it, and it's just been so lovely to see you. That's one thing I really miss about being in a bigger organisation, is the little corridor chats that we used to have and stuff. And so yeah, it's been really lovely to see you again and reconnect with you. So thanks for having me on.
Brilliant. So, everyone, this has been the Trailblazers Experience podcast. I will share all the links of where you can find Lydia, learn about This is Enkel and everything that's happening in her world. I feel there's so much that we can learn too. But as always, please remember to follow, like, share, subscribe, and tell another woman about the podcast. I feel there's so many nuggets and so many great women we're having on this show who've come past and will be coming on. So, thank you very much.